Everybody, glad to be back. Back at the home office. Spent some time last week out traveling, which if you've been watching, you saw that. And I thought today might be worth sharing a little bit about that. If you noticed, I missed yesterday, which was totally not cool. But that was really just because of what happened with travel, like the last weekend, which doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. It's Monday and I traveled on Friday. How could that have a thing? Well, I call it the cascading effects of bad travel awesomeness. So I think the big thing that I want to talk about, though, is really just expectation setting. Because I think probably the best piece of advice I ever got about travel, I got prior to going on a mission trip. So my wife and I and my daughter went on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. And one of the the very first thing that they said to us, and something they just put into us every time we met before we went on the trip, was you're just not in control of this trip. Like, you can't expect anything. Whatever we plan will not be what happens, and just be okay with that. When it comes to travel, like in that context, because there were just so many variables, everything from the government choosing this, that, and the other, to just bad transportation in the country and all this sort of stuff. You just can't expect it. And so I took that mantra and I said, okay, when I came back from that experience, because a whole bunch of stuff went wrong. Like, along the way, I had a cinder block dropped on my foot, got to experience a Dominican Republic hospital, like lots of stuff going on. It was a crazy experience. But I came back from it changed in that, I shouldn't expect things to work with travel. And I would say there was this on and off expectation, maybe setting up tight connections, this, that, and the other. But before COVID, and then once COVID happened and I got back on the road, I found that the whole travel system had changed. That essentially airlines that had previously been very reliable and resources that you could count on just weren't going to be there anymore. And so, a lot of my expectations is going into travel at this point is I expect the transportation system to fail fantastically. That's my first thing. Like, when you go into travel and you got a lot of business travel, you got a lot of stuff back to back, you should go into it expecting that it's all going to fail, because it's a lot easier. Like, other people might be, freaked out at the moment, but it's like, if you expected it to not work, then that's fine. And granted, that's not how I go through life. I don't go through life expecting everything to fail. I actually expect things to work pretty generally. But I've come to learn that when it comes to business travel, especially just statistically, right? If you're somebody who only travels once a year, then, if there's a 10% failure rate of the transportation system, but you only travel once a year, you can go like a 10-year period and only have one big failure. On the other hand, if you travel every week and it's a 10% failure rate, guess what? Every 10 weeks, you're going to have something that goes really bad. So I think that's some of it, is just my expectations are really low of the transportation system because I've had a lot of transport problems. And so, I think the first thing is, if you're going into it expecting things to fail, the first question is, well, what do you do? Like, how do you handle it? And so I think the first thing is you just make sure that you keep the essentials on you, right? Like, at all times. So in my bag, I actually, in my travel bag, I actually have an extra sweatshirt or rain slicker kind of coat that I keep in my travel bag that I might not ever use, but I expect to maybe have to use. I keep a rolled up blanket because, hey, I've slept on the airport floor before. And I can use that jacket, rain slicker, whatever. I can use that as a pillow. So I'm set. I can kind of sleep on the road. A towel might also be handy, although I'm not sure I can fit it in my current bag. That's not something that I have with me all the time, but there have been times when that would have been a good thing. And then kind of the minimal toiletries you need that will go through TSA, like, keep that kind of very basic stuff, some cash, some, other base, like, have 47 chargers. I have battery backups, all that sort of stuff. But that's not really the important thing. Like, those are all basics that help you survive when travel doesn't work out. I think the more important thing about expectation setting is setting expectations with your spouse or your kids or people that matter in your life that are on, like, the front and back side of the travel, that, hey, this is going to be complicated. This might not work out. This might be a problem, And so one of the big things I do with my wife is as soon as I get a travel delay notification of some sort, it's like I start the line of communication. Hey, honey, this is going to be messed up. I don't know how bad the mess up is. This is what it's going to do to our schedule moving forward, right? And just kind of keep that open line of communication going throughout. I also don't get, I think the other side of that is because I kind of expect it to fail and not work out. I'm also, my connecting flight, right? So on Friday, my flight was delayed, and it was delayed significantly. And it was like, there's no way I'm making this connecting flight. Now, in this case, I could have adjusted that and probably should have, but I just didn't think a lot about it. There was another flight later in the day. I could have moved things around to give myself more buffer to make that less likely. And I normally do. Like, to be clear, because I expected the system to fail, I try to make sure I have a good 2-3 hours between my connections if I can make it work. But living where I live, I can't always control that. But if you go into it expecting it not to work, then you're in a lot better state. So, I like to keep the basics. I like to keep coat, rain slicker kind of thing, a blanket, toiletries, medications, all that stuff on me, assuming any bags I might have are going to get lost, assuming that the flight's going to be delayed, assuming that when I get there, the other big thing I've had happen quite regularly is when I get there, the rental car place is closed. So I don't have a rental car, or for whatever reason, it's dead for Uber at that point in time. So, having some contingencies for those kind of thing of how am I going to get where I need to go when I get there if the flight's delayed long enough that the rental car place is closed, which has happened to me many times. Luckily, usually in most places that have an airport, you can find an actual traditional cab company to take you places. And they're pretty smart about, this flight's delayed, I'm going to have somebody there. I haven't had to walk to a hotel yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. I do apprise myself of public transportation as their train, that kind of stuff. But just thinking about those things in advance, just taking a moment to go, okay, I am flying to, SFO in San Francisco. And out of that, there is, public transportation that can get me to Sunnyvale, which is my destination. And kind of knowing a little bit about the routes in the map, knowing about the Ubers, the Waymos, the stuff that might be available, and understanding that, the rental car situation, just knowing all that stuff in advance is super helpful. And especially if you don't travel very often, you might not think to go, okay, what are all the ways I can get from point A to point B? Because I've had the case where I had a perfectly good rental car, reservation or everything, and I get there and they're out of cars. I don't know how they run out of cars, but they run out of cars, and then you got to do something else. So I guess that's the first part is I just really expect travel to break. And I keep those expectations, I share them with people, in my family, if my family's traveling with me, okay, the flight's delayed. I know you're kind of anxious about that, but here's what we're going to do to deal with that. I think the other weird thing that can happen is you can make new friends. So on Friday, and I really from an expectations perspective, you should go into travel mistakes as in, I could have an adventure with somebody new and it could be fun. And maybe this is bad advice. I am kind of a big guy and seem scary. And so maybe this wouldn't work for you, but it works for me. I'm just kind of helpful to people. So last Friday when I got to my gate and my flight had already left 20 minutes earlier and there was no way I was getting on a plane again for another 7 hours, I knew it was time to go figure out if I could rent a car because I would like to go home that day, not show up the next day after, getting home after midnight. So just as I'm getting ready to turn and go find a rental car, the guy comes up to the counter and he's all hot. He's really mad. He's not spending another 7 hours. I said, hey, but I'm driving. You want to ride? Now, granted, that's probably a bad thing to do from a security and safety perspective, but seemed like a guy in trouble. I was headed there anyway, so why not? And I made a friend. We ended up having a great time. I learned a whole bunch about show dogs. I didn't know anything about showing dogs or what dogs are all about, but apparently it's really cool. His dogs were really cute, and I'm not really a dog person. So, but, I was able to give him a ride. We both had to struggle through because at the car rental place counters. The counters were full, and luckily we were able to find a car. And we made it. But, my next step would have been, okay, well, I can't do that. There is an Amtrak station in my town. Was that going to get me there faster than waiting for the flight? Who knows, right? But the net of it is just being flexible and then setting expectations with people. Like, so I picked up this guy, this guy's like going to ride with me. And I'm like, okay, so just so you know, this is kind of how this is going to go. We're going to have to go over here to the rental car place. They may not have something. If they don't, we can figure something else out. Blah, blah, blah. We had a nice chat, learned a lot about his business. We had a good time. Was able to drop him off. He got his, drop him off where I dropped off my rental car so he could get a rental car in the town that we were supposed to fly to. But I really feel like, just really having this expectation that the transportation system will fail, right? Like, I've even had Uber drivers do weird stuff like, just stop the car in the middle and get out and like go to the bathroom and come back. Like, I've had just bizarre stuff happen. And so I think going into business travel, if you're going to do a lot of it, expect it and then know what you're going to do with your clients, your speaking engagement, whatever. Having that all figured out in advance, like taking a moment to go, if my flight gets canceled, what am I going to tell the venue? What am I going to tell my team? Is there somebody in the area that can cover for me? Like, having those contingencies at least thought out in advance is super helpful for everybody involved. I did have I mentioned I didn't come in on Monday because I had stuff I'd planned to do Friday evening, but I got here, or Friday afternoon. I gotten home late, couldn't get it done Friday afternoon. So I came in Monday night to get it. And that's why I didn't have the video last night. And so I should have set expectations with you all. I should have said, hey, sorry, folks, I'm not going to be going live today and set that. So I kind of failed at that one. But on Friday, I had to work with somebody I was having a meeting with. And so it was this constant thing. Hey, my flight's delayed. Can we do this meeting at this time? And working it out to where, once I finally got safe and landed and all that, I could have the call. So my advice generally is set expectations with travel, like expect things to break. And once you do, work through it to the end to get there successfully and just keep your chin up. Like, it's just a bad travel day. They're going to happen. And if you have a positive mental attitude, you might make a new friend. So see y'all next time.